Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, and in this video we are going to be testing out an RTX 3060 12GB model in the new game that just got released, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. Now, looking at the PC requirements, especially the minimum PC requirements, it's kind of concerning that to get 60 FPS native, you have to have low settings for 1080p, and that's using a 2060 Super and or an RX 6600. And both these cards only have 8 GB. So that also, I can kind of see why the performance is limited in those cards, considering it only has 8 GB and ray tracing is automatically turned on. You cannot turn it off. The only adjustment you can make from what I saw was path tracing, and path tracing is considerably more demanding than just regular ray tracing. That's why you need substantially higher cards. Over here on the side where it's talking full ray tracing requirements, the minimum there is a 4070, which is a 12 GB card. So I think the performance that's limiting these those GPUs, the 2060 Super 8 GB and the 6600 and pretty much any other 8 GB card, is that there's just not enough VRAM to run the game at higher settings, because it's going to eat into that 8 GB. It's going to go well over that 8 GB. So you're going to end up with poor performance, stuttering, things like that on the higher settings. Anyway, my goal in this video is to see with 3060 native and with DLSS on what we can do to hit roughly that 60 FPS average. I'm hoping at 1440p with DLSS on and maybe high quality preset, we can hit that 60 FPS average there, or come close to it with maybe tweaking it around, considering ray tracing is turned on. And we'll also see how much VRAM is actually used during the different testing performances, like with native and DLSS on. Depending on the graphic settings, how much VRAM is actually being used. And I think that'll give you a good idea of what you need for your card, not just for this game, but you can kind of take this as a litmus test that going forward, games are going to be more and more demanding like this one. All right, so we're going to start off 1080p. We're going to use the high quality settings and DLSS. We have DLSS turned on because you have no option to turn this off or not. Then we're going to go with DLAA, and that is not going to be an upscaler, so the resolution scaling is turned off. As you can see here, the static resolution scaling is turned off. We're at 100%, so this is essentially native resolution. So unfortunately, my FPS is showing at the exact same place that they have some wording on the screen, so it's a little hard to see. Sorry about that. And we're at the very beginning of the game. This is a fresh start because I wasn't very far through it. But just a quick check. So starting right off the bat, we are hitting an average of 56. So let's just run through this little section of woods. So it's not 60 FPS, but it's really close. I wouldn't change much on the settings. We're getting almost at 60 FPS, and I'm really surprised that the 1% low is at 45 FPS, and that frame time graph is fairly steady. So we're not hitting any big spikes in performance that's causing any kind of lag or jittering. And if you look at VRAM usage, we are hitting 11 GB. So that is well over 8 GB. That is in like the 6600 or the 2060 Super. And even 4060, the 3068 GB model, current gen 7600, the base current gen GPUs all have 8 GB, which is unfortunate, except for Intel. Intel is coming out with their new B580, and that has a minimum of 12 GB. So that is, and even the B570 has 10 gigabytes. So that's kind of promising that Intel's kind of stepping it up there and raising the bar, coming in with better performing GPUs with more VRAM and a lower price than the entry level offerings from AMD and NVIDIA. So yeah, I wouldn't change anything here. So let's go in, and I'm probably going to have to restart the game, but we're going to up the quality. Yeah, you have to restart every time. It's kind of annoying. So we're going to go to very ultra and see what kind of performance we have there, and then turn DLSS on. All right, so moving up to very ultra, we are start this starting off in the low 50s, so not much of a difference between okay, no, things are starting to drop a little bit more now. Now we're the current is sitting around 4950, so it is dropping it a little bit, but not by much. We went from an average of 56 down to an average of 51 with a 1% low of 44. So honestly, it doesn't seem like there's much performance hit going up a couple of presets from high to very ultra. It did drop it a little bit, but nothing too concerning. You could easily get by playing this game on very ultra and not have to turn DLSS on. The gaming engine they use, for some reason I thought it was Unreal Engine 5, but it's not the case. It's a different gaming engine. It looks pretty nice, not as nice as Unreal Engine 5. Comparing this to like Black Myth Wukong, huge difference I find in look, but it still looks pretty good. Better than Starfield. The textures are there, they're just not as good. The foliage just doesn't look as good overall as Black Myth Wukong, but still pretty good. So let's go and turn DLSS on. We'll go with quality. All right, so that made quite a bit of difference. We've jumped from low 50s up to the high 60s. That's pretty good. That gives me high hopes that we're going to be able to hit close to 60 FPS in 1440p. I'm just running around here a bit. We're at the still hitting mid 60s, average of 65. Again, that frame time graph still nice and level. I don't see any major spikes. 1% low is 53, which is pretty good considering that the average is only 65. So we're looking at a 15% difference between the 1% low and the average. Yeah, so the 3060 12 gigabyte seems to be still, holding its own in a game that just came out in 2024, and this card came out. When did it come out? I think it was 2021. Anyway, let's up the resolution. And then let's turn DLSS off again. We'll put it back on to DLAA. Looks like we're hitting an average of 40 FPS. So we do have a little bit of a dip. It went from, what was it at, like 51 I think we're averaging around 51, 50 at 1080p, and now we're down to 41. So we dropped 10 FPS. Same with the 1% low. It went from 45 down to 35. So we lost a little bit of performance there. Still, watching that frame time graph, it's still relatively smooth. And you could easily probably get by, again, just having the settings on very ultra and not using DLSS. Now, that doesn't mean the whole way through the game you're going to end up with the same performance. There's caves, there's cities, things like that. So different areas might have different performance, but being out here in the forest area, things are looking pretty good. Let's go back into options. DLSS on. I don't want to do too much upscaling and impact the quality of the picture, so we'll use the quality setting. And we are starting off with an average of 57. Okay, running through the woods here though, it is dropping quite a bit. We're now down to 50 and 51. That's bringing the average down to 53, so it's impacting it a little bit. We did pick up about 10 FPS, which isn't too bad, turning on the DLSS quality setting. And just running around the forest. Still, that frame time graph is relatively stable. It's not moving around a lot. If it was really bad, we would see that 1% low drop, but it's not far off the average. We're sitting at a 46 1% low and an average of 54, so that's relatively stable. But we're still a little bit off that 60 FPS average. So I don't want to go down a whole nother level with the preset. Let's just try the shadow quality. I want to leave the texture there, so we'll turn the shadow quality down a bit. And maybe global illumination. Let's see what that does. Okay, that made a big impact. We jumped like another 10 FPS just by turning those two settings down. So there you go. You can get to that 60 FPS average by going the very ultra preset, turning DLSS quality on, and then just turning the shadow and global illumination down one notch, and you're at 60 FPS at 1440p. I'm actually kind of surprised that we're hitting this kind of frame rate with a 3060. Yeah, I wish I would have the 3060 8GB model just to give a better comparison on how much that extra 4GB of VRAM makes a difference. Because that way you can compare apples to apples, because it's the same card essentially, with one with 8GB and one with 12GB. Anyway, I think in the next video, I do have a 3600 and I have a 2060 Super. I think I'm going to test out the minimum requirements and actually see how well it performs, and how much VRAM is getting eaten up on that card at low settings, because right now we are just shy of 12GB. It's 11.7 gigabytes of VRAM being used. That's using DLSS, 1440p, very high settings with a couple of things turned down. And if you are having RAM issues, texture pool, that's a big one. To show you, oh, it's making me mod. Okay, so we're going to turn this down and we're going to come back in. So we're at, it was at 11.7. We're using over 11 gigabytes. So let's turn this down, and then let's go with even high, and we'll see what kind of VRAM usage we'll see afterwards. Yeah, so here we are. We turned that the textures down to high, and as you can see, at one point we were using 11.7 gigs of VRAM. Now we're at 10.7. Just turning that down a little bit, and if we go again, let's turn down the resolution. Is that going to make any difference? Probably not. If it does, it'll probably be pretty minimal. Yeah, nothing has really changed, so we did that. Now let's go and turn those textures down here. So turning the textures down to low. Let's restart it again. Yeah, so turning those textures down to low made a huge difference on VRAM. Now we're only using about 9 gigabytes. And that's a far cry from the almost 12 that we're using with the very ultra setting. So again, if you're running into VRAM issues, and I would recommend just turning the textures down all the way so that you're freeing up as much VRAM as possible, and then you can play around with the other settings to get the best performance out of your GPU. So if you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below.